Bonjour. I warmly thank Eric for inviting to speak here. It's a real pleasure and honor for me to visit your conference, and I apologize that I have to speak in English. I understand French, especially written text, but my speaking is unfortunately so bad that it's better to speak in English. Thank you for this opportunity. So I'm going to talk about the so-called new working body that has recently become quite much studied in anthropology, sociology, in economics, organization studies especially. And by service and expert economy, which is central when talking about the new working body, we mean that in post-industrial societies the economy is more and more based on service and expert sectors. The concept of post-industrial refers to the economy where production system is based on knowledge, information technology and innovations. And please, I would like to notice you that just tell me if I speak too quickly or too slowly. Okay. Yeah. This means that the investments must be based more and more on human resources rather than technological investments, like, for example, in the industrial economy. So investments are made on human resources, not on technological resources. Post-industrial economy rests on global division of work. This means that the shifting of industrial production is very much concentrated on countries with low wage costs. We know the China phenomenon, India, Pakistan phenomenon. So industrial work is shifted to these countries, while innovation work and high-profile service and expert professions are concentrated in rich countries. The rise of the service economy is also explained by the qualitative transformation in services, which means a shift from delivering goods or services to creating pleasant customer services and experiences. This means that when we go, for example, to a shop to buy a new computer, for example, we don't only want the computer, we want a pleasant customer experience. And in this process, the nature of many traditional professions has also changed. For example, we as university teachers, or doctors, or policemen, etc., they are producing services to their customers. So everybody, more and more people are producing services to their customers. Students are customers nowadays in universities. They are not students really in the traditional sense. And with this logic, it is estimated that, for example, in Finland, already 70% of all work consists of services. Of course, the digitalization is at the core of new economy, since it enables scaling the services very efficiently. And the cognitive capabilities are often associated with crucial competencies in service and expert-based economy. But however, it would be a mistake to assume that the embodied skills do not matter anymore. Embodied skills do matter. You could say even that new embodied competencies are crucially important in the current labor market, especially various kinds of relational or communication skills, which actually mean that they are skilled, embodied performances, are emphasized even in businesses more traditionally based on tangible technical skills such as ICT. So here I have made a quite simplifying classification how we can conceptualize the different modes of working bodies in different production systems. In primary production, like in agriculture, the working body is quite much using your physical strength, struggling to perform hard physical tasks. But then in the industrial production, which meant quite much reorganization of working bodies in time and space, bodies were forced to labor in reduced space and rhythm in order to be as effective as possible. This pretty much meant that the so-called mechanical body became the dominant mode of the working body. But in post-industrial, or like they say, post-Fordist production, the economy means that, as I already said, the investments are made on human resources. So employers look for labor processes that are based on embodied capacities or attributes possessed by workers, since managerial strategies aim to maximize customer satisfaction. And this means that the performative and expressive body has become the dominant mode of the working body, and especially person-to-person or body-to-body skills are emphasized in the new style labor market, like, for example, Nixon and his colleagues has called it. So, looking good and sounding right not only contribute to the matrix of skills demanded by employers, but they also function to materialize an organization style or brand. For example, if you go to certain banks or chains of clothes shops or restaurants or lawyer companies, you can feel the brand, the embodied brand of the company. It's not. It happens in the subconscious level that you don't really notice it if you don't think about it. But for some reason, the employers, for example, in a certain shop, they look the same because they have to fulfill the certain standards of that specific company. Or if you think about, for example, as I said, banks or lawyer firms, it's not really spoken aloud, but there are certain standards for the employees' bodies. I will talk about this more in my presentation. So, instead of using raw physical power in the work, like in the primary production, in the agriculture, or controlling the body mechanically, like in the factory, the physical struggle actually at work happens in the form of controlling the appearance, emotions and gestures of the working body. And this in turn demands body work also outside the laboring hours, keeping fit, and different kinds of body technologies are really necessary to to fulfill the standards of the new working body. So our physical working hours, they really extend outside our waged labor. We do the physical work also outside the work in order to keep fit and be energetic and productive at work. When we talk about emotional and affective labor, it's good to look at the concept more carefully. Perhaps some of you know Arlie Hochschild's legendary study of flight attendants, which was published already in 1983, and it is still referred very much. By emotional or affective labor, Hochschild meant the work that requires one to induce or suppress feeling in order to sustain the outward countenance that produces the proper state of mind in others. So she studied how flight attendants use their embodied performances in order to get their clients just to feel good. You know, when you go to the airplane, so flight attendants, they are really skillful in creating a certain kind of feeling and confidence to customers. Some people are afraid of flying, for example, or they fly for their work very much, and flight attendants, they are required to create the pleasant and nice atmosphere and feeling to you, and they use their own affective bodies in order to create this feeling. Actually, the shift from industrial production to post-industrial production and to the emotional and affective labor means that the traditional so-called bodily soft skills, like appearance of your body, health, communication skills, ability to control and perform emotions and to create emotions in customers, it means that this has become the hardware of the labor market, so-called hard skills in the labor market, like French scholars of economics, Bailey, what was the first name? Frank Bailey and Alexander Lenné state in their study of managers in the service sector. And I think that it's quite interesting that, for example, these French scholars, as well as some UK scholars or US scholars or Finnish scholars, Nordic scholars, they talk about the same phenomenon and the same kind of new embodied competencies in the labor market. Although I think there exist some cultural differences. For example, customer service in Finland, I think it's still different from French or English style. Perhaps some of you have seen some movies from Aki Kaurismäki. Yeah, it gives you an idea of the Finnish traditional emotional etiquette. Gestures are a little bit different compared to French style, but still the scholars talk about the same phenomenon. And in the current individualization and personification of the service labor processes, which means that you really have to use your own body in your work. This means that the primacy of the personality is there. Some researchers have even talked about the tyranny of personality in the labor market instead of CV. instead of the primacy of CV or so-called formal competencies. It means that everybody's looking for the right guy, the right personality. The personality is actually at the core of professional competencies, which is highly paradoxical and problematic from the viewpoint of working with and transforming your body, as I will demonstrate when discussing about the recruitment criteria in more detail. So, in order to get to know how the ideal working body, the so-called right personality, should be performed at the corporeal level, I interviewed together with my colleague 10 recruitment consultants representing 3 well-known big recruitment companies in Finland. And these 10 recruitment consultants, they do all sectors in the labor market in Finland, but because Finland is a small country, there aren't really recruitment consulting companies specialized only in ICT sector. That was our primary interest. All these companies do different sectors, but our interest was really in the ICT employment sector especially. And I think that recruitment consultants, they are gatekeepers together with headhunters for the labor market. And their business lies in their ability to deploy fitting personalities in specific organizational cultures with core aims and values, communicational customs, routines, and emotional etiquettes. And this is one phrase that one consultant told us. It describes the centrality of the personality. Jukka, he was something like 40 years old male consultant, and he said that still some years ago concrete, hard know-how was looked for, but now you should be more versatile, flexible and adaptable and learn quickly. Everybody wants to hire a good guy. A candidate with poor social skills is sent nowhere. So this is quite harsh fact. It is sent nowhere. No matter how good coder, for example, you are in ICT. It doesn't matter if you cannot create pleasant customer experiences. So, as I already told, recruitment consulting is about puzzle solving, because as our interviewees told us, their job is to make personalities and jobs and working teams fit together, fit to each other. And in this job, consultants use their own bodies as instruments. After receiving applications, the final list, the so-called short list of potential recruits, is assembled by determining which candidates fulfill the formal criteria of education, work experience, and other specific skills. And some clients also reveal their demands of the recruited employee's age, gender, ethnicity, and so on, although these so-called taboo things are not normally discussed openly. But after checking these so-called formal criteria, the consultants told that it's all about using their own bodies in order to feel the right personalities. So in order to figure out what kind of jobs should be fulfilled, they go to the employer, to the client company, and they try to feel the atmosphere in that specific company, and they observe the team and the place, and they try to figure out what kind of personalities would fit that specific company and those specific working teams. They, for example, told that some companies, they are really open or close by their atmosphere, and the working spaces themselves tell something about these emotional etiquettes also, and communication etiquettes. What was interesting was that the consultants told that, of course, there are many kinds of psychological tests. I think they are used everywhere in order to test what kind of personalities the candidates represent. And these formal tests, they are actually used also by the consultants. But the consultants told that they don't rely on these tests. They are only black on the white for their customers, for their clients, to the companies. But they only rely on their own observations and feelings. And they say that, for example, in key positions, employees are seldom hired by these CVs or psychological tests. One consultant said that the psychological tests can only smell outlines of different personalities and should serve only as a basis for discussion, for the personal encounters and discussions with the employee candidates. In the second phase of the recruitment process, consultants rely on their personal encounters and interviews with the candidates. They utilize their own affective impressions and feelings of the candidates. And you could say that their own work represents a kind of emotional or affective labor, because they actively and constantly have to reflect their reactions and impressions when going to the companies, when meeting the employee candidates. So we could say that the employee candidate's personality, it shows itself as a bodily performance that is filtered through consultants' embodied reactions. So in this sense, as I already stated and argued, the personality is some kind of embodied performance that should convince the consultant, and his or her embodied reactions are at the core of these selection processes. Consultants really talked about gut feeling. I don't know what it could be in French. Gut feeling. Huh? Could you translate?
What do you want to translate?
Gut feeling.
What?
Gut feeling.
C'est
une intuition.
Intuition, oui, c'est ça.
Intuition, yeah.
Intuition.
Yeah.
D'être bien connecté avec, d'être branché.
Yes, it has to do very much with the intuition. Yes, but it's more embodied. It feels in your stomach, or I don't know, somewhere in your body. Yeah. Yeah. It was a surprise actually for us as researchers that that they so much talked about this gut feeling when meeting the candidates. Timo, a male consultant also, he said that it's a gut feeling, so I don't necessarily have to interview so much. I see really quickly in the interview what kind of personality the guy has. When he walks in, how he behaves, shakes hands, and so on. He really believed that he has the ability to see it immediately when the candidate enters the room. He knows who is the right guy. And Jukka, the other consultant, said that quite often the first impression, when you shake hands with a guy, if something pricks in back of the head because there is something strange, it's better to follow that. So if they feel that there is something wrong with this person, I don't know what it is, but I have this feeling, so it's better to follow that feeling. He said that he knows that this is not the right person. We were really interested in this strange feeling. What can it actually mean? Because of course there have to be some concrete embodied gestures or whatever, some sensual signals that are classified or categorized as right or wrong messages of the personality. It was very puzzling for the consultants to verbalize their working methods and these criteria. But then they, for example, when talk about these positive signs, they talked about smiling and firm handshake, appropriate clothing, behavior, and so on. But we were interested in finding out what do they really mean. Can they give some examples or details? It was very hard for them. But then when we asked about these strange feelings and negative signs, so actually they could list quite many details. They, for example, said that fiddling with a paper in the interview in a nervous way, answering with difficulty, sitting hunched over. It means that if a consultant is there and I'm the employee candidate, if I sit like this with you, so it's a bad sign. It tells something about my wrong personality. But then on the other hand, also answering too quickly to the questions of the consultant, or speaking too much in a wrong tone of voice. It can be a sign of arrogance, for example. And this kind of wrong signs, they cause unfavorable vibrations or feelings in the consultant's body, and we concluded that it's a special kind of rhythm and directions at talk, sight, and movement which really matter in the interview. The consultants emphasized that the candidate who look in line with the vacancy that should be fulfilled in terms of dress, makeup, hairstyle, and jewelry, that is always a good thing. For example, if a blue-collar job applicant is dressed in a suit, so that's not good. Your dress and appearance should be in line with a job that is going to be fulfilled. And also the other way round. If you are looking for a white-collar job, but you dress like this, so it's not a good sign. It's not very promising for you. And also, they spontaneously listed several details in the appearance that cause suspicions in their minds. For example, visible tattoos, piercings, overweight, bohemian, so-called, they said bohemian hairstyle, punk style, nose jewelry, boldness, bad skin disease, general slovenliness. It means that you're like a little bit like this. Or revealing clothes, especially with women, if they are using this kind of t-shirt, so it's not very convincing. And then all our interviewees said that if they can see from the candidate or they read from their CVs that they have sporting activities, that the candidates have some kind of sports as their hobby, so it's always a good thing, because in our culture the trained lean body is axiomatically associated with beauty and health, and it gives an impression of discipline, capability, strength and endurance. And our interviewees pointed out that fitness correlates with sick leaves, and they have to take that seriously. They have to consider it seriously and have to keep it in mind when shortlisting in the end the candidates. And one interviewee said that, of course, the appearance shouldn't matter, but in the end it matters. He said that sometimes I'm forced to think whether the client appreciates a certain kind of appearance. So this is a kind of elegant way to express it, not to speak about it, not to admit it, that themselves would categorize people to ugly people or beautiful people, but they are forced to think whether their client appreciates some kind of appearance. And also, in this sense, you could see that there is also many kinds of indirect discrimination. The consultants say that they are forced to think whether their client appreciates that the employee candidate would be, for example, 40 years old, white male, heterosexual employee candidate. So how you can conceptualize this everything? We have, together with my colleague Jana Parviainen, we have talked about effective decision making. We have claimed that consultants' judgments of job candidates operate through affective resonances and meaning makings in their bodies. And in the theories of decision making, the role of affects has been discussed in the context of intuition, as we already talked about. And we have discussed this theory of intuitive decision making by deconstructing the concept of affect, by which we mean the forms of subjective, intercorporeal, and culturally structured ways of feeling, sensing, and so on. It represents a form of tacit, embodied knowledge that is culturally and socially produced, and it is very much non-conscious. We just know with our bodies, but it's not always easy to verbalize it. How we know? What does the knowing means? What is to know with your body? It is also very important to note that consultants' own embodied histories and preferences do matter. in effective reactions and in effective decision making. This is very important point. Our effective reactions and feelings, they don't come from emptiness. Our own embodied histories resonate in our effective embodied reactions. So, for example, the consultants told that if they have had active sports history by themselves, or worked in the army, or whatever, army experience is very much valued in Finland. Why do you laugh? It's because of our traumatic history. Our consultants told that everybody wants these guerrilla guys, and which have gone through the very disciplined army service, and they thought that these guys are really good leaders and very disciplined working personalities. But of course, I know that I sound a little bit critical. I must be critical, of course, as an academic researcher, but I think this is just a fact of life. Everybody's own specific corporeal histories matter. We can't help it, but it's important to discuss it openly and to be conscious of it, and not to think that there are some natural differences between different kinds of bodies and so on. We must know where our effective reactions come from. For example, Sara Ahmed has talked about this in a very, very clever way. She talks about the politics of fear and so on. But also, it's very important to know that affects, they constitute social hierarchies, social orderings, and as a result of this, some bodies are simply free to move in the labor market, and some are not so free to move in the labor market. Effects constitute social structures and hierarchies. And some researchers have studied this, for example, in the context of appearance, discrimination, effects attached to obese or overweight fat bodies. Different kinds of effects are in the media, for example, attached to fat bodies compared to lean and young bodies. And these affective attachments, they are really powerful. They really matter. We claim that this effective decision making, it leads to searching for so-called riskless habituses, bodies. Recruitment companies usually offer some kind of satisfaction guaranteed contract to their clients. It means that re-recruitment, if the recruitment goes wrong, if the client is not satisfied, so it's performed, it's redone for free or half price. So, of course, this is also just a very simple economic fact. It's cheaper for consulting companies to make the right decision in the first round, because if it doesn't go right, they have to do it half price again or for free. It depends on the contract. So of course this logically means that consultants they try to avoid all kinds of risks in the candidates' bodies that would that would perhaps be harmful for the contract with the client. Recruitment consulting is based on counting on stereotypical performances and representations of the ideal working body in order to close the recruitment. But for the job candidate, there is a certain challenge because she or he should somehow cause a feeling of click in the consultant. Because the consultants, they say that they should feel the click in their head when the person enters in the room, so that they should get this feeling and confidence of the right personality. So it means that somehow you have to be different from the crowd. You have to stand out. But then there is the risk of standing out too much. So where is the where is the security line? Yeah. How to create this click? Sometimes the so-called weird guy may nevertheless has the suburb personality and the best know-how for a position to be fulfilled. But if he or she has very distinct style in their appearance, for example, it should be redeemed and compensated somehow. You have to, if you are a job candidate, you have to convince the consultant that you have the suburb capability and competence to the job. And our interviewees told that sometimes if they decide to select this very eccentric personality, so they feel better to inform their client beforehand, so that they take a call and say that, okay, we have found this very good personality, very good competence, but don't be afraid. He looks a little bit awkward or whatever. So they say that they have to soften this shock. Sometimes the consultants may feel, when I talked about this strange feeling, they might feel that this personality is fake, that somebody tries to be something else than she or he really is, and they emphasize that the candidate should have a seamless performance of the genuine or good personality. They believe that you either are or you are not a good personality. One consultant, Hannele, she was a female consultant, she said that you can develop technical skills and raise experience, but there's nothing you can do about the chemistry and personality. You can't change the person, and it is not the thing that the work community is willing to do. It's expected that one is quite a finished package regarding one's personality. So in the end, if we think about the capitalist or post-Fordist new liberal body again, we can understand the body and the self in that way that they are something that causes an ideology of the entrepreneurship of the self, as one of my colleagues Hardy and Lahikainen have stated. It means that the body is understood and the self is understood as an object of investment and pursuing profit. So you should all the time invest somehow in your body and yourself, and it should provide some kind of profit in your career, in your social arenas, and so on. And there is, as we quite well know, a large business around the transformation of the working body. All kinds of body techniques are marketed, and we should keep fit, go to the gym and go to mindfulness classes, and all kind of body techniques are served and marketed to us in order to fulfill the criteria of the ideal working body. This all means that the emphasis has shifted on individual responsibility instead of structural changes in the working life. The ideology is that if you have a problem with your work, if you are feeling very stressed and you have sleeping problems or whatever, it's your own problem. You should do something about yourself. You should go maybe to yoga class or whatever. So I don't deny, and other researchers do not deny, that of course there is the agency of all bodies, of everybody, but the problem could be that this ideology covers the structural social problems, and there is this eroded boundaries, shifted boundaries between paid work and body work, as I already told, and Chris Schilling, for example, has talked about it. And this raises the question of innate and acquired bodily traits and skills at working life, because we have this pressure to cultivate and control the body in order to acquire the bodily capital in the labor market, and we are pushed to constant transformation of our bodies. Our bodies are in the process all the time, but still there are some embodied traits and unavoidable processes in the body, for example skin color, age, gender, so on. So my final question is that how far can bodily capital be gained actually through body work outside the wage labor hours? We are pushed to embodied transformations and individual body techniques, but how far can we raise our embodied capital in the labor market? And if someone of you would like to see, for example, these references I have posted here, introduced here, so you can, for example, see this article. It is found in the net. This first article, Feeling the Right Personality, and so on. It's published in the Nordic Journal of Working Life Studies, and our article is also published in a book, which is here mentioned. And about effects, embodied effects in the context of touch. This is quite different context. Me and my colleague Marjo Kolehmainen, we are hopefully getting our article soon published in Body and Society. And then there is also about controlling emotions and sentiment, which is published in French. It has come out in Ethnologie Française. Because I have studied cosmetic surgery before, and there I also noticed this phenomenon of transforming your body because of the labor market. There were many interviewed persons in my study who told that they need to have cosmetic surgery because they don't want to be thrown out of the labor market. There were women and men. And this was actually the first inspiration and push to look at this new working body once again and more carefully and think about this recruitment consulting business. I thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you for this great presentation. Actually, I would like to know if you have your result consultant talking about mistake of judgment they make. Maybe because it could highlight that the performance is not so deeply embodied. I'm referring to Judith Butler performativity concept. Maybe it's not so deeply embodied, and if they are talking about mistake they made, maybe can you explain why they made mistake?
Mm-hmm.
To know if I'm clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand. Thank you for your question. It's very interesting question. I think because they emphasize their own experience, and that comes through years. There is no formal education in order to become a recruitment consultant. They gain their knowledge and their skills through the work. And they said, for example, about the mistakes. They said that yes, sometimes, for example, they have selected older candidates or candidates of certain ethnicities, for example, to the ICT sector, because they had superior competencies, formal competencies. But then the clients sent these candidates away because they really didn't want, for example, that old people or Pakistani or Indian people to work in the ICT company, and they always referred to their client's will, and through years they learned to know the preferences of the labor market, and I think this is quite sad. I was talking about the searching for the riskless body, because it means that they start counting on stereotypical bodies and choices. And they said that in the beginning of their career, they might have nevertheless of the strange feeling they got. They might nevertheless choose the person, some person, but then their clients were not satisfied either in this in this selection, and then they say that the more they got the experience in their work, the older the consultant was, the more he or she relied on his or her intuition. So this is all I can say about it.
Okay, I can hear. So I will try to speak a little louder,
Yeah.
but I think that everyone
Can everybody hear?
Yeah.
There. Oh, they can't hear.
They can.
Yeah. Can you?
So then, so it doesn't work.
Ah,
Anyway,
okay. Can you?
I will try to speak.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually have a some theoretical commands or
Mhm.
recommendations in the sense that what you have spoken about is entrepreneurshipness of the self. And one of my supervisor in Freiburg, Ulrich Röttling, wrote in 2007 a book which is called The Entrepreneurial Self. It was translated last year at Routledge. I can give you the reference.
Okay.
After that.
Yeah. Thank you.
And he is actually precise. I mean, he's not speaking only about the work, the sphere of work, but about a whole theory of society in which we are, each of us, no matter what kind of field or institutional realm of society, we are pushed into this logic that you are describing. Because in a family, for instance, you also have the pressure of being a good father or a good mother. These are social roles. See? So you have to stay in a sort of a competition to defend your role, if you want, with Erwin Goffman's, or his, because here you speak about a role, a posture, a face that you have to defend at the moment when you're being interviewed. But this entrepreneurship is not only characteristic for the work or for this kind of situation, it has infected somehow all other spheres of social life. So this is the first remark that I have. A second is also somehow connected to bibliographical reference. Unfortunately, he writes only in German. He was never translated into English or French. It's my second supervisor at the University of Frankfurt, Robert Bubuter. He's developing a concept. This word exists only in German, spüren. In German, you have two words for feel, or for the French, sentir. Fühlen and spüren. Okay, so fühlen is the English feel. Spüren is something which is atmospheric. It's the thing that you get the tick, the perfect, the click you said, the click. This helps you probably to catch. It's a corporeal catch somehow, which helps you to get the person that you need in a job interview. And I think that somehow this completes maybe what you have tried to explain to us by your practical experience, that somehow the recruiters, they are not going on the feeling, but on the spüren feeling. Because it has to do with a practice, with experience, with sort of, how shall I say, you see profiles all the time of human beings, postures, mimics, gestures, voice tone. It's like a theatrical or filmic experience in a way, and you are always looking for this shablon, which is cutting the person somehow, and you say, that's it. But it goes a lot about this spüren, which you cannot explain. It's not a rational thing. It's not reason. It's feeling.
Yeah, thank you for your comment and these interesting reference suggestions. I don't know the German language so well, but I guess that it could mean the spüren. It could mean something like affects, because affect is it's a kind of ceiling concept. It refers to unconscious and very often involuntary embodied emotions, ways of sensing, feeling, and emotions also. But it's, for me, that sounds something like affects or affective processes. You couldn't say only affective thinking or feeling, because it's really wider. But yeah, but I think that German language is very very interesting in the context of body research, because they have the certain kind of nuances, and also English it's much richer compared to, for example, Finnish, and because we have only one. By the way, we have only one word, tunne, for the whole range of these things: feeling, sensing, emotions, and so on. There's only one word. Maybe that tells something about our culture. I don't know. But thanks for your interesting comment.
Peut-être une dernière question. Et après on enchaîne, allez-y.
My question is related to sport practices in the CV, as you told.
Yeah.
Because as I've been reading, we see a growth of some kinds of sports nowadays, like marathon, CrossFit, mixed martial arts. And it seems it's different if you see in a CV that some person runs in a weekly basis than if the person runs a marathon. Because somehow it points out to that this person can deal with different and extreme situations, and then it's somehow really important to labor market, etc. And then my question is if these consultants somehow told you something about it, these different kinds of modalities, once sport practices are so important in this whole process. So.
Yeah. Thanks for asking about that. They say that doing sports, whatever that is always a good sign for them. But some other studies have shown that, for example, running marathon nowadays, it's very it looks very good in your CV, especially if you are looking for a leader position. Yes. Perhaps Eric knows more about this circle of different sports, how they come to fashion and out of fashion, and so it's very middle class way, and I think that you are special. You all must be specialists on Bourdieu, for example, who has talked a lot about this class circle of different kinds of sports. But on the other hand, the consultants also say that whatever hobby, a serious hobby you have, it's always a good thing, because it tells about dedication, determination, discipline, and goal-orientedness, and so on. So not only sports, but that is definitely always a good thing. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Je propose d'arrêter là pour cette intervention et on va enchaîner. Merci beaucoup, Taïna.
Merci beaucoup.